Hey there poetry pals, welcome back to another video. This week I am annotating To Become One by the Spice Girls. This is part of a new series where I annotate all of the poetic techniques that I can find in a poem or a song. This is a technique that I have learnt through my time studying English literature, and so it will be useful if you are studying poetry or literature at any level, but also if you are a writer and you want to improve your poetic technique, then learning how to annotate and analyse other poetry is obviously going to help. The first video in this series was London by William Blake, and I will link it down below and it will be part of a playlist as well. Before I jump into the actual piece, I just want to run through the structure of how I approach annotating these poems. I go through 6 steps. These are basically like my shopping list, and as long as I have hit these steps, then I know that I've got a good range of what I have found in the poem or the piece. So the first thing I do is I write a summary of the piece. Depending on the poem or piece, especially if you're annotating something that's particularly archaic, part of this step might be translating it into modern English, just so that you truly understand what the writer is saying throughout. But largely 1 or 2 bullet points will do the job as well, just summarising what is happening in the context of the poem or lyrics. Then near the bottom of the page I note down the context. This includes the historical context in which the piece finds itself, but also the literary context, which is, what other texts does this piece link to? What does the piece have influences from? That sort of thing. Then I move on to the poetic techniques, or mostly like the form. So this is about stuff like rhythm, rhyme, line breaks, stanza breaks, that sort of thing. Then I have the rhetorical techniques. The reason I split poetic and rhetorical is the poetic is literally like the form of how it is written, how it is presented on the page. Whereas the rhetorical techniques are writing techniques that can be found in any form of writing. Examples being, imagery, metaphors, similes, that sort of thing. Alliteration as well. Alliteration's one of those weird ones because it could definitely be in both. The meaning of rhetorical techniques when it comes to writing actually means writing to persuade. But in this context, I like to think of the rhetorical techniques as writing that is written to have an effect, and as in an additional effect or meaning beyond just what the words mean. Speaking of effect, I then go on to number 5, which is the effects, where I go through all of the techniques and all of the different things that I have spotted so far and look at the effect or possible meanings that those might have. Repeating certain words, for example, might mean different things in different contexts. This is where I write down all of the possible meanings of it. This is the bit where people who don't like studying English will go, "Oh, my English teacher would always ask me why the curtains are blue when it's just blue." And my English teacher would be like, "No, it reflects the depressive mood of the author." To be clear, I'm not asking you to guess what the author meant. I'm asking you to think about what possible meanings can be found there. Once you realise that it's not actually about what the author intended, but what potential readers could find meaning in, that makes it far more interesting. The final thing I write down is the themes found in the piece. This is particularly useful if you are studying poetry, whether in an exam or for coursework, but being able to quickly identify the themes of a piece will help you in linking different pieces together, because often when studying poetry in academia, we're going to be asked about how these themes are presented by different works. So when you are rehearsing for an exam, what I do whenever I'm revising is I end up with these messy little sheets with it all annotated, but each bit will have like the themes written on it. And so that's how I can find to link them together. But before we get into annotating the poem, please make sure you like this video, comment down below what brought you here, and subscribe to my channel. I make videos about all things poetry. And while we're on the subject, why don't you follow me on social media? I am at JC Alford Poet on all of the things. Ting! P.S. You can also show your appreciation for my channel using your money if you have it. You can buy me a coffee or support me on Patreon, and the links to do that are in the description down below. Right, on to the poem. Okay, we're going to jump right in with the summary. This is To Become One. The title of the song is spelt with the numbers, not the letters, so 2 and a 1. And according to Wikipedia, they describe this song as being about bonding between two lovers. But I think it is actually a little bit more explicit than that. I think it is important to say that the speaker is initiating, and we have mentions about using contraception as well as consent. Whilst the original lyrics are slightly gendered, we do have a boy later on, and considering this is the Spice Girls, it is about a girl trying to woo a boy. So, now we're going to move on to the context. This song was released as a single in December 1996, and it actually went on to become Christmas #1 in the UK of that year. It did pretty well around the world as well. It's part of their first album and their third single to be released after Wannabe and Say You'll Be There. It is a love song, but more explicitly, it is about physical love. When in an interview about the writing process, about the album, one of the other Spice Girls said that this song ended up being about Jerry Halliwell and Matt Rowe, who was a co-writer who apparently kept making eyes at each other throughout the writing process. So I guess it was about their sexual tension as well. An important part of the context here is that it is in fact about this is a song. This is the first song that we're analysing on my channel, and of course this does affect the way we are going to analyse it. I am a poet primarily, and my experience is in analysing poetry. The way we analyse songs is going to be slightly different, but again, we're not going to be focusing on the music, we are just going to be focusing on the lyrics. Speaking of lyrics, there is a change in lyrics. There are technically two versions of this song that both came out in 1996. On the album version, in verse 2, you will see that I have put two lines next to each other. And on the album version, we have any deal that we endeavour, boys and girls feel good together. But the girls decided to rewrite those two lines to be more inclusive to their LGBT plus fans. So they rewrote those two lines to once again, if we endeavour, love will bring us back together. So the single version is the one that was Christmas #1 with the more inclusive lyrics. When I went to see them at the reunion, I thought that this was a new lyrics that they had written more recently, but it is in fact on the single version that came out in 1996. So a bit more context for you. This was written by the girls in collaboration with Matt Rowe and Richard Stannard. They all got together to write the entire album together, but it's pretty cool that the girls were involved in writing this one as well. So that's a lot of the literary context of it, like what went into the writing of the song and stuff like that. I think it's important to recognise the importance of and the history of girl bands as well. But now I want to talk a little bit about sort of the 1990s and the historical context in which this song found itself being released. The 1990s was known for the third wave of feminism. Now, third wave feminism actually sort of comes in many jackets, if you will. One of the most defining characteristics of third wave feminism is that it is very difficult to define. But definitely an element of it was this sort of like girl power pop feminism, which of course the Spice Girls were a part of.
Other aspects of it are intersectionality, sex positivity, and transfeminism as well. This is a key context that this song finds itself in, particularly the sex positivity part of it. Okay, so now we've got the pink pen out and we are going to be talking about the poetic techniques. These are the techniques that are generally only found in poetry, so rhyme, rhythm, line breaks, that sort of thing. So we're going to start off with the rhyme scheme of the piece. Verse 1 follows a rhyme scheme of A, A, B, C, C, B. This is largely echoed in verse 2, apart from the fact that the third line of verse 2 does not rhyme with the final line. Instead, they break the rhyme scheme to talk about the boy. Let's work it out, boy, instead of rhyming with take it or leave it. The pre-chorus, the first line doesn't rhyme, but we do have get it on and two become one. So the pre-chorus does do A, B, B. And that is the same for the bridge as well. And then the chorus is A, B, A, B, C. Although arguably it is in fact A, B, A, B, B, because the only way to B does rhyme with baby. You'll notice that, like for the chorus, I've put the first two B's in brackets. That is because arguably these lines are just repeated, and can you argue that a rhyme rhymes together if it is just repeated? Anyway, speaking of repetition, lines 3 and 6 of the verses are defined by repetition. They are two phrases repeated. So in the first verse, it's say you believe it, we can achieve it, we can achieve it. And in verse 2, it's let's work it out, boy, and take it or leave it, take it or leave it. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the structure of the song. Big shout out to Chris, who helped me out with understanding the structure of pop songs. This song follows a fairly standard pop song thing. You'll notice that I haven't printed out all of the lyrics in order because obviously the chorus repeats and I couldn't fit it all on one page. But the structure of this piece is verse 1, pre-chorus, chorus, verse 2, pre-chorus, chorus. We have got an instrumental, the bridge, the chorus, and then a repeated line that fades out. And the final line that is repeated is it's the only way to be. And that is repeated until it fades out. Chris tells me that this fade out is a tradition that originates in jazz music. So was pretty cool to learn. So thanks, Chris, for teaching me about that. The reason I include this is that it's not really doing anything new with the structure of a pop song. It's sort of sticking into that tradition. So this song is trying to be a pop song. It's not trying to be anything different, which is lovely. So now we're going to just go through a few more things. We're going to go through the rhythm now. The rhythm is largely a trochaic tetrameter, which means it is defined by a stressed syllable followed by an unstressed syllable with 4 stressed syllables per line. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, go to my scansion and meter and rhythm videos to understand more. As I said, this is roughly the structure of it, and for different parts of the musical for different parts of the song, depending on what the music is doing, the lines are longer and shorter, but largely it is a trochaic tetrameter. What is interesting here is how the syllables can be made to fit in with the music. So the rhythm maybe, is linked with the music inherently. Okay, so now I just want to run through some examples. We have We actually have a grammar mistake in line 2, which is a dream of you and me together. The me here should be I. It should be a dream of you and I together. But the me echoes with the be of line 5 of the verse. So those words hit the same notes in the line. So I think this is sort of intended to be a bit more of an internal rhyme to add to the music of the piece. So that's kind of interesting. But again, it is kind of odd. So another thing in the first 2 lines is we have the rhyme of forever and together, which is technically a dissonant rhyme. If you haven't already, go ahead and watch my video of everything you need to know about rhyme. But basically, a dissonant rhyme is when the vowels rhyme, but the consonants slightly miss. Like they have a similar consonant sound, but they are technically not the same. So a V and the TH are slightly different. And so that is a dissonant rhyme. Further down in verse 1, we also have the alliteration of doubt and danger and don't of the following line, which is interesting. The rhyme of believe it and achieve it is technically a multi-rhyme, as multiple stressed syllables do rhyme here. So then in the pre-chorus, we have the alliteration of come a little bit closer, which is lovely. We're also highlighting here the repetition of baby throughout, which does sort of serve as a rhyme at some points. So now we're going to move on to the chorus. I've highlighted here the repetition of love. Along with the word it, love and it are repeated throughout this piece, and they are almost examples of antanaclasis, which is when words are repeated but with different senses, different meanings. So the word love and the word it do a lot here, and later on I'm going to show you all of the different possible meanings for it when we get there. We also have this little love, the alliteration, which is pleasing, and we also have this rhyme of before and more in the chorus, which is nice. Okay, so we're just going to move on to the verse 2 and run through that a little bit. Again, it's a similar-ish rhyme scheme. We've got the rhyme of playing and saying, which links these two. But line 3 of verse 2 breaks the rhyme scheme of verse 1 by having it with boy instead of rhyming with leave it. This is frustrating to me, and at the end of the video I will reveal what I would have written for that line instead of let's work it out boy. But like the first verse, lines 3 and 6 both repeat. In the album version, we have the consonants of deal and endeavour. Basically, the reason it's consonants and not alliteration is because the D in endeavour does not happen at the beginning. So it's just a repeated consonant sound, which means it is consonants, not alliteration. So then I'm just going to run through the new lines, which is, once again, if we endeavour, love will bring us back together. Again, with both of these versions, they've got the same rhyming words. That is dissonant rhyme. And we have the alliteration of bring and back, and the repetition of love again. So when we go to, we've got take it or leave it, which has a pleasing repetition of it throughout. And again, this one rhymes with the achieve it and believe it of the earlier verse. So the bridge mirrors the pre-chorus in the a little bit. So we've got come a little bit closer and be a little bit wiser. And that first line echoes with the a little bit as well as the alliteration. The next one, they have changed get it on for put it on. So that's nice. Here is where we're talking about condoms. We also have this repetition of two and two in the iconic line of tonight is the night when two become one. This is to do it's just nice because we got tonight, night, two, one. I'll be talking more about the possible meanings and effects of that later on when we get to that part. But for now, I'm just highlighting the poetic techniques. This is what I've spotted so far. Again, we're talking mostly about form here. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Okay, my loves, now we've got the green pen out, which means we are focusing on the rhetorical technique. Rhetorical, the reason I split sort of poetic techniques and rhetorical is the poetic techniques are mostly focused on the form of the piece, whereas the rhetorical techniques is more about the content of it. So metaphors, allusions, double meanings, that sort of thing. So the first thing that I noticed here, we're going to go through in order, is we've got this like spiritual or religious imagery. So we have candlelight, soul, dream, spirit, all of that sort of thing throughout that link together to create this sort of spiritual like lexical cloud of stuff, a recurring motif, if you will. But then we've got this soul, which whilst also contributing to the spiritual motif, could also be an allusion to soul music. Candlelight and soul. It could be about sex at time. So we're going to move on because we've also got this sort of repetition of free your mind, which is this freedom is repeated throughout. So another thing I noticed here in this first verse is the we can achieve it. This could be a double entendre. I'll talk about the meanings and what I think later. But let's be honest, this song is all about sex. So I'm actually going to go through later and highlight all of the things that I think could be a double entendre or an innuendo. So in the pre-chorus, we have Get It On, which I think could be a allusion to Marvin Gaye's song, Let's Get It On, as well as a double entendre. So then also to become one is a metaphor. Two people do not literally become one person, although you would have to tell the people in my church that that is the opposite. So one thing that like this repetition of love, yes, I highlighted it as antanaclasis, and it comes up with different meanings throughout. The same with it. Make love is also a metaphor here. Okay, so on to verse 2, and we have the silly games and empty words, which are again both metaphors. Whilst silly games is not necessary, it could be a description of some games. I'm not sure she's talking about her partner or potential partner playing a silly game like Catan. I think she's talking about emotional games. So another thing I noticed is that you and we are repeated throughout. This is another recurring thing that pulls together the speaker and the subject of this piece, which is exactly what the speaker wants, if you know what I'm saying. One of my favourite notes in this entire piece is that it does a lot of work here. So what I mean is, it is repeated throughout as a word, and in different contexts it means different things. Later on in this video I'm going to write down all of the potential meanings for it later on. So I've also got this sort of feel good together being a double entendre in the line boys and girls feel good together, which is, do you know what, I just like it, you know, it's good. Also, the we of if we endeavour, which is present in both versions of the lyrics, it is another rhyme for you and me together, we endeavour, me together. So that's just pleasing, isn't it? It's very pleasing. Okay, I'm just going to talk about the take it or leave it, which is a well-used phrase or saying. I wouldn't go so far to say it is cliche, but it is there, which is nice. Also in the bridge we have put it on, which is of course a reference to condoms. Okay, my loves, now we're going to look at the effects. So we've highlighted the poetic and rhetorical techniques, and now we're going to look at like the effects or potential meanings that are generated from those techniques. So with this repeated spiritual imagery, we're sort of linking sex and spirituality, or, you know, elevating sex to this spiritual or religious experience. With the reference to soul music, that allusion to soul music, we sort of are generating this image of that stereotypical romance of like candles and Marvin Gaye, which personally I am into. I really enjoy it. So now I want to move on to this idea of the dream here. I think the dream takes on two possible meanings here. One of, is it even possible? Is it just a dream, something that can't come to reality? Or a dream of you and me together is more of an ambition, like, yes, it is possible. This is my dream. This is what I want to do. When you link this with the final line of the first verse, which is we can achieve it, you can take it to mean we can achieve that dream, which is lovely. One thing that I do want to highlight is this rhyme of stranger and danger. For kids who grew up in the 80s and 90s, the phrase, stranger danger is quite well known. That idea of like, not taking a stranger's sweets and ending up in their van. I think this allusion here, I don't know whether it's on purpose or not, but it is quite interesting sort of thing to generate here. But the fact is like, it's freeing yourself from danger and it's don't be a stranger. So, the overall effect is this is not what it is. These are two people who know each other who are trying to do it. One thing I wanted to highlight about the alliteration of doubt, danger and don't is that all I wrote here is just that the D is negative. Follow me for more queer rereadings of Spice Girls lyrics. Okay, so I just wanted to talk about the double entendre of we can achieve it. So as I said a minute ago, we can take it to mean we can achieve the dream mentioned in the earlier line, but it could also mean we can achieve orgasm. So that's lovely, isn't it? Okay, so moving on to the pre-chorus, I've just highlighted the come and just wrote heh. I'm sorry. Okay. Okay, so the next thing I wanted to highlight was this allusion, the get it on, being an allusion to Marvin Gaye. Marvin Gaye, though, you know, Marvin Gaye with his song Let's Get It On falls into the soul and like romance category, as well as R&B, which, you know, this song does owe a lot of its roots to. Whilst this song is obviously very poppy, it definitely has its sort of musical roots in like soul and R&B here. So the allusions to Marvin Gaye kind of make sense here too. I just want to talk a little bit about the two become one. There are multiple meanings possible here, but it's sort of talking about a physical union, but also like with the context of the rest of the piece, it could be about a spiritual union. But my personal favourite, maybe it's about orgasming at the same time. So two become once. I just also wanted to highlight about this repetition of like two and two. Tonight is the night and two become one. I just enjoy this because if you take away the two from tonight, it becomes night, and if you take away the two, it becomes one. It's just a really pleasing paralleling here, which I enjoy a lot. So again, we go into the chorus and it's, I need some love like I never needed love before. I think it's fairly clear here that the love is talking about physical love. We're not talking about emotional love here. And this is clarified by the repeated lines, wanna make love to you, baby. The highlighting of before and more links the emphasis of this has happened before, she's back for more, we're looking for a reoccurrence here. So then we have the final line of the chorus is set your spirit free, it's the only way to be. And the internal rhyme of free and be is interesting, although I have highlighted that this might not necessarily be internal rhyme. It could be a line break between free and be. Either way, free and be is sort of linked by rhyme. And it links being with freedom. It's sort of like free yourself of your thinking mind, put the thoughts to one side and just be for a second, which, you know, is linked to mindfulness, that idea of focusing on the body and just being for a second. So am I trying to, maybe I'm pulling at this a little too hard, but I think this song is all about mindful sex. So there you go. Okay, we're going to move on to verse 2 here. And we've got this silly games and empty words, which I think is sort of like highlighting communication issues in the relationship. So the you in this, the subject of the poem, subject of the song, is playing the silly games, which does look like the speaker is sort of blaming the subject. But in the following line, empty words we both were saying, is an example of them taking responsibility for those issues as well. With the third line coming in with, let's work it out, boy. Now, I'm going to go run through all of the meanings of it later on, but this could be taken to mean, let's communicate about our problems, let's work out our problems, but it could also be, let's work out our bodies, you know. Another key part of it here is that obviously the repetition of boy does gender the subject, but I am all for us just reappropriating that word and changing it to girl if we want to. But again, at the end of this, I will be revealing how I would have rewritten this line. Okay, so just going to the album version now, we have any deal that we endeavour. I just wrote deal and highlighted it as like capitalism, but also the alliteration or the consonants of D. Let's make a deal with that D. But also this could be seen as a reference to, you could take it to mean like fetish and, negotiating a power dynamic and coming up with a deal that is satisfactory to everyone. So who knows? Again, the sort of boys and girls feel good together. Very heteronormative here. Not a fan of that line. Much prefer the single version. So we've got, once again, this links to the, before and back for more, like bringing it together. We've done this before. Let's do it again. And then the endeavour here, once again, if we endeavour, it takes effort. And if we take it in the context of the communication issues that the speaker has been feeling with the subject, then maybe it's sort of about like, hey, let's try again to sort out these problems and work together and try. But here we've got this love again. So once again, if we endeavour, love will bring us back together. Do we mean emotional love and the communication that could solve these issues in our relationship? Or are we talking about physical love or physical intimacy? Are we trying to say that sex and physical intimacy will solve all of our relationship issues? Which, of course, it's not going to solve all of them, but my, does it help? Anyway, I'm going to move on to the final line of verse 2, which is take it or leave it, take it or leave it. And I just wrote here, consent, baby, yes. But I think it's also worth saying that like take it or leave it as a phrase refers to, here is my offer. I am not negotiating this offer. You are either going to accept this offer and we're going to move forward, or you are going to reject this offer. It's being very clear. It's setting boundaries. This is what I want. If you want it too, let's go. If not, no worries. So big fan of advocating for consent. So we're going to move on to the bridge now, which is be a little bit wiser, baby. Put it on, because tonight is the night when two become one. I'm liking this, wiser as opposed to closer. I think this sort of put it on, and the inclusion of this reference to condoms is this idea that safety is sexy, which, I'm a big fan of. Also want to highlight that the repetition of a little bit is just pleasing. I don't really have any meaning to add to it other than it is pleasing, and being wise and using condoms is great. Also just wanted to highlight that the two become one and the come inside become is quite nice. One more thing that I wanted to highlight is that the pre-chorus, the second pre-chorus actually has a different starting line, which is, are you as good as I remember, which is a reference to the subject's sexual prowess. It's a rhetorical question. But hey, it's a bit of flattery. It's a bit of, are you as good as I remember, baby? Big fan of that. Okay. Yeah, so now I'm just going to run through the themes that are occurring in this piece. Obviously, we are talking about sex. We are talking about consent. We are talking about romance, love, feminism, and relationships. The reason I save writing down the themes till the end is that often I find annotating the entire poem gives me more of an insight into it, and writing the themes big and clear on your annotations means that they're easy to find when you come back to refer to this paper later. These are a really good way of linking pieces together if you need to write a essay about them. So, yeah. Okay, so we're just on to the final extra bits now. So normally, like with any poem, there will be sort of extra bits that you think are worth highlighting. So in London, which is the video I did last time, it will be references to hearing. Whereas for this one, I just wanted to highlight all of the potential double entendres, the innuendos, because like at no point does the speaker say, I want to have sex with you. So everything in here is allusion and innuendo. So this is me highlighting all of them. My personal favourites are achieve it being a reference to orgasm. Make love is a metaphor. But it's an enjoyable one, isn't it? Any reference to love here is a reference to physical love. And then also it is another one as well, which I find interesting. Do you wanna become one with me, baby? Yeah. And finally, I just wanted to run through all of the possible meanings of the word it throughout this piece. I think it is interesting. I did say earlier that the word it does a lot of work here. So I think this is really an interesting way of exploring the use of innuendo in this song. So here are all the possible meanings for the word it in the different contexts that we find it throughout this piece. Number one, it, that I mean that I want to get together. So this is the say you believe it. Say you believe that I mean that I want us to get together. Could also mean that we can get together. So say you believe that we can get together. It is also a reference to orgasm, like we can achieve it. It is a reference to connection. We can achieve connection together. It is maybe a reference to the relationship as a whole, not just an intimate relationship, but a romantic relationship as well. It's obviously a reference to sex, like, let's be honest. It's a reference to freedom. We can achieve it. We can achieve freedom. It is, in the context of let's work it out. That could be a reference to our problems. It could also be a reference to our bodies. It is also, when it comes to the take it or leave it, it could be a reference to the offer of sex, like take my offer or don't. And finally, in the put it on, we're talking about condoms. Safe sex, yes.
So that's all the annotating that I could find for To Become One by the Spice Girls. Let me know if I missed anything in the comments, because I inevitably have. Also, let me know if you want to do this as a group, because I could upload the lyrics and we could all annotate together in a big shared Google Doc, which might be fun. Let me know if that's something you want to do in the comments. I hope you found this video useful. I'll definitely be doing more of these in the future. I've been really enjoying stretching my sort of analytical muscles whilst annotating different songs and poems. Please let me know what you'd like me to do next. All comments down below. I will annotate anything, but I will not do anything with offensive language, so bear that in mind. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like this video, comment and subscribe, and don't forget to follow me on social media. I am at Josie Alford Poet on all the things. And you can support the channel by supporting me on Patreon or buying me a coffee. The links to do both are in the description. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you all next time. Bye.